The year 1914 is most often remembered for the stagnant, blood-soaked trenches of the Western Front. Yet one of the most significant and unusual chapters of World War I unfolded thousands of miles away on the coast of China. The Siege of Tsingtao was a collision of three great empires, the British, the Japanese, and the German, that marked the only time in history British Tommies and Japanese samurai descendants fought as a unified force on land. It was a conflict defined by chivalry, innovative technology, and a shifting global order that would eventually set the stage for the Second World War. At the heart of the conflict was the German colony of Kyotsku and its capital, Tsingtao, modern-day Qingdao. By the early 1900s, Imperial Germany had transformed this Chinese fishing village into a model colony and a formidable naval base. To Kaiser Wilhelm II, Tsingtao was the Gibraltar of the East, a vital hub for the German East Asia Squadron that projected German power into the Pacific. The city was a slice of Bavaria transplanted to the Yellow Sea, featuring red-tiled roofs, paved streets, and a world-class brewery. However, beneath the European charm lay a fortress protected by three massive defensive lines, concrete bunkers, and heavy coastal batteries like Bismarck and Huichen, designed to sink any fleet that dared approach. When the Great War erupted in Europe in August 1914, Britain invoked the Anglo-Japanese alliance of 1902. For the British, the German presence in China was a threat to maritime trade. For the Japanese, it was a golden opportunity. Japan, having rapidly modernized during the Meiji Restoration, was eager to prove its status as a first-rate global power and to dismantle European influence in its own backyard. Japan issued an ultimatum to Berlin, demanding the immediate withdrawal of German warships and the surrender of the colony. When Germany ignored the demand, the rising sun moved to eclipse the German eagle. The coalition that arrived at the Shantung Peninsula was a historical anomaly. The Japanese committed a massive force of 23,000 soldiers, while the British sent a symbolic but determined contingent of 1,500 men from the South Wales Borderers and the 36th Sikhs. Opposing them were roughly 4,000 German defenders, a mix of professional Marines, sailors from the trapped fleet, and civilian volunteers. Among the defenders was a legendary pilot named Gunther Pluschow, the Dragon Master of Tsingtao, who flew a Rumpler-Taube monoplane to scout Allied positions, even engaging in aerial duels using only a pistol. The siege was a laboratory for the future of combat. While the ground war involved traditional trench sapping, the methodical digging of zigzag approach trenches to get closer to the enemy. The skies and seas saw revolutionary developments. The Japanese seaplane carrier Wakamiya launched Maurice Farman seaplanes to conduct the world's first successful sea-launched air raids, bombing German positions and naval vessels. This was a direct ancestor to the carrier-based warfare that would define the Pacific theater decades later. On the ground, the Japanese displayed a level of logistical precision and heavy firepower that stunned the British observers. Using monstrous 28-centimeter siege howitzers, the Japanese systematically pounded the German batteries into silence. The British Tommies found themselves in a strange cultural exchange. Initially viewing the Japanese as students of Western military science, they quickly realized they were fighting alongside masters of modern siegecraft. Despite language barriers and occasional friction, a mutual respect grew in the mud of the Shantung Peninsula. The British noted the relentless work ethic of the Japanese infantry, who often advanced hundreds of yards in a single night under heavy fire. The German defenders, though vastly outnumbered, held their ground with a grim defiance, protected by concrete galleries and miles of barbed wire entanglements that the Allies had to breach by hand. The climax of the siege began on the night of October 31st, 1914, coinciding with the Japanese Emperor's birthday. The Allied artillery unleashed a hellish week-long bombardment that shook the earth for miles. By the night of November 6th, the Japanese 24th Infantry Regiment and the British South Wales Borderers launched a synchronized final assault. In a cold, moonless dark, the troops charged the central redoubt with fixed bayonets. The fighting was fierce and claustrophobic, moving through the concrete tunnels and bunkers of the German forts. By dawn on November 7th, with their ammunition exhausted and their defenses breached, the Germans raised the white flag over the signal station. The aftermath of the Siege of Tsingtao was as remarkable as the battle itself. Approximately 4,700 German prisoners were taken to Japan, where they were treated with a level of chivalry that seems alien by modern standards. At camps like Bando, the prisoners were allowed to form orchestras, publish newspapers, and even interact with the local Japanese population. It was during this captivity that German prisoners performed Beethoven's Ninth Symphony for the first time on Japanese soil, a tradition that persists in Japan to this day. They also introduced Japanese culture to Western-style butchery and the bonkachin tree cake, which remains a popular snack in Japan. However, the political legacy of the forgotten siege was far darker. The ease with which Japan had defeated a European power fueled a burgeoning sense of nationalism and military ambition. Japan's subsequent 21 demands to China signaled that they intended to replace the European colonial powers as the dominant force in Asia. For the British, the victory was bittersweet. They realized their ally was no longer a junior partner, but a rival that could eventually threaten British interests in Hong Kong and Singapore. The siege proved that the old world order was crumbling, and the Pacific was no longer a European lake. In total, the Japanese suffered roughly 2,100 casualties, while the British lost 70 men and the Germans around 700. Though the numbers were small compared to the millions dying in Europe, the strategic impact was seismic. The Siege of Tsingtao was the end of the beginning, a moment when the steel-helmeted soldiers of the industrial age and the spirit of the Bushido Code stood shoulder to shoulder, rewriting the map of Asia and setting the trajectory for the 20th century. It remains a haunting story of a world in transition, where a German brewery in China became the flashpoint for a global shift in power.